Good day. Welcome to Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com. I'm John Marino, and we are made possible by Sharc Creative. They produce us, and also a product of Entergy, the Indian Point Energy Center, supporting our communities right through April of this year, 2021. Lipolis Electric. Don't be left in the dark. You get Lipolis. Hightower, Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard, and White Plains Hospital. Special thanks to all of our heroes at White Plains for all they've done throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Welcome to the Cup of Joe political show. John Bailey back with us. John Bailey, publisher, editor, White Plains CitizenNetReporter.com. And John, I will point out this is day one of the month of February, and we have quite a snowstorm here in town.
Yes, very, very blustery, 16-mile-per-hour winds up to 19, up to 29, and the snow is going horizontal most of the day.
I've heard
I have 14 inches down here.
I've heard the winds could get up to 35, 45, so 16, 19, 29. I guess we're doing okay at the moment, considering, right?
Well, yeah, so far. I mean, it's not sticking in the trees, which is
that's a good thing right now. So, and you're in White Plains. I'm just below the Westchester border in the northernmost Bronx. I can walk into Pelham Manor and New Rochelle and Mount Vernon from where I live. So
the Yukon. You're in the Yukon.
Here we're getting socked pretty good around the tri-state area, not only the Westchester area as well, too. John, the snow is white. The color zones for COVID range from orange to yellow to all different shades. Now those color-coded zones in Westchester have been lifted. Good news at the moment.
Yeah, I do not understand why Yonkers isn't in a absolute chartreuse zone since they have so many infections, but who knows why and who knows what decides. I mean, look at Portchester. They were in a orange for some time, and they had actually fallen off the most infected
areas.
Areas. And in fact, Yonkers is number one, and they've never been red.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Never been red in Yonkers?
Yes. Let's see. As of the 27th, I mean, Yonkers had 1,418 infections a week for the last 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. So that was the question of COVID vaccines. We talked last month about the early stages. Now here we are, about 4 weeks later. Where are we with vaccines? Seemingly, we hardly have anything around the tri-state area right now, vaccine-wise.
Yeah. Well, where are we now is people are trying to get appointments. That's what the problem is. Most people trying to get appointments in White Plains have to wait to April for the first shot. And also now people do have to try other places. Like my wife went to the Bronx and got a shot because it was just available, and not that many people realize that you can't always get a vaccine very near where you live, like the county center. Right. So you have to keep trying, and that's the way it is. In fact, but that's the problem, is that people are reluctant to go elsewhere. But the Bronx, you can get a shot.
It depends in the Bronx. My father is 92. He would like to do it at a local pharmacy and not have to go anyplace else. And that pharmacy tells me we haven't inoculated anybody yet, not even a healthcare worker, and we still haven't got a supply in. And tell Dad that we're not going to be able to inoculate him until probably at least April.
Well, this is a problem. We're not getting really good information on and dissemination of availabilities. Just really not.
The question now is the vaccine supply in our area. In Westchester, we hear in New York City, they are pretty much out this week. They're getting some more in. How about in Westchester, the vaccine supply? Is this a problem too? You can't go for a vaccine or get an appointment really unless there is a vaccine to delve out and to stick into your arm.
Now, they have rescheduled me for a second shot on the 27th of February. And this would be very good, but they have to have the vaccines, as you say. Now, my feeling is that the governor said he got another shipment in, and he was distributing it at the end of last week. And let's face it, it has to be better organized. You have to have the facts before you. And man, if you're going to start inoculating the people of color population, which appear to be very reluctant to get the shot, you have to have them ready. And I think you have to bring the vaccine to them. I think you have to take the EMS units, who are very used to giving injections, and you send them out with the stuff refrigerated, and you do it block by block. And with community leaders, knocking on doors. It's a radical thought, but you're not going to get those poor people vaccinated if you rely on them to come to you.
So is the county board then maybe considering issuing a mass vaccination proclamation for everybody?
I think you have hit it on the head. I mean, the county executive has to do a caveat. Like, for example, if you as a parent are not inoculated, you can't send your kid to school. And that would be one way of doing it. It'd be sort of like a reverse vaccination qualification.
Mm-hmm.
And that way there would be more incentive to get it, because really the people want to get back to work.
Mm-hmm. Now, soon
they can't unless their kids go to school.
SUNY seems to be considering inoculating all students before they can come to class in person too. So this seems to be something else leading in that direction.
However, the students and the high schools and all the schools are not the big infectors. They are really low. The school districts, particularly White Plains, have done a great job of stopping the COVID from spreading in their schools. So therefore, that is not the problem. The problem is communities that are not enforcing social distancing. Mm-hmm. And Yonkers is one of the leading culprits at, 1,418 infections a week for 2 weeks leading up to January 27th. Mm-hmm. Now that's terrible. And they were not a red zone? No. How can that be?
So how do we enforce social distancing then without being a police state?
Fines.
And you know what?
Police issue a summons, make it a $25, $50 fine. That'll stop them.
Okay. I know I've seen people, talk to people who maybe double park a car and say, don't leave your car there. Yeah, I've gotten a ticket before. I don't pay it. I never pay it. People have that attitude.
Of course not.
Gets a traffic ticket.
But I mean, the point would be you have to do something like that to at least enforce the social distancing. And now that restaurants are opening on February the 14th, this is another factor. Mm-hmm. I mean, Governor Cuomo is such a romantic.
Yeah, he picked that day. Do you think that makes a difference whether or not indoor dining is allowed?
Well, it will certainly help the restaurants, which have really been absolutely destroyed. I'm working on statistics as to how much the restaurant business is really down, and they're beginning to take shape from the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, and they are really hurting. I do not understand how the restaurants can stay open when their business goes down really like $100 million or so.
Right. Now that's understood, and yet the number one concern here now is COVID spread. Mm-hmm. Do restaurants being open matter when it comes to COVID spread or potential spread?
Well, it gets people. You can get people back to work. They have to have some sort of stability to get back on track. You're never going to get the New York City economy back if you don't get the restaurants open and if you don't get the theaters open, for goodness sakes. Theaters, movie houses, stuff like that.
Talking money, the county budget, we have a new year, we have a new budget. How does that shape up to you? We have talked about this before. You've looked at it again over the last 3 or 4 weeks since we last spoke. How does it shape up now going into the second month of the new year?
Well, I can tell you in White Plains, we have a big problem. We're $9 million down the first 6 months of our fiscal year from July to December. Now, if we don't have a turnaround and come very close to what we made January through June last spring, we're in big trouble.
City of White Plains, right? City of White Plains.
Yes, no. Right. However, County Executive George Latimer did say last week to me, I interviewed him, that it all depends on getting everyone vaccinated. And if that's what it really depends upon, it's going to take a while. Right now, I don't see the whole entire county getting vaccinated at the herd immunity level till mid-July.
Mm-hmm. At least, maybe September or later.
And what does that mean? It means you've got to get it done by August. Otherwise, you can't open those schools.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's no guarantee today that the holiday season of 2021 will be like it was 2019 and before. Right now, it's shaping up as if it might be another 2020 style type.
Well, the White Plains holiday season in December was awful.
Yes.
Way down, and it was down 2 million.
And that's a big reason why the city of White Plains is where it is today.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
But and I also did find out that the switch to the internet ordering is big time. It is up almost doubled. It is doubled over the last 3 quarters of the year.
Mm-hmm. Now, from what you can tell, April 1st is 2 months away. The governor issued a mandate last year saying all communities, localities, municipalities in New York State need to have an individual for their community police reform plan on his desk. This is 60 days away from today. Again, today is February 1st, less than 60, because we have less than 30 days in the month of February. So what do we have, 28 this year and 31 in March? 59 days we have?
Well, do you really think that everybody's worrying about that right now? Do you really think everybody's worrying about that right now?
That's why I'm asking.
I don't think so. It's got to be moved up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got to be moved up. I mean, it is it's unwieldy because you got a lot of factors coming in.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of factors that they have. Do you increase the police force? Do you have heavy retraining? And you have the new bail law that supposedly they're going to relax, maybe. And there's just a lot of factors that law enforcement has to consider.
So do you think the governor, if he doesn't have a plan on his desk from any particular community, would go ahead with his stated, I hate to use the word threat, but his thought that maybe he'll withhold some funding from any particular community that does not comply by April 1?
Well, considering the dithering that's going on in Washington over the COVID stimulus, already the Republican Party is playing straight politics as usual. And considering that dithering, the governor is going to have to cut a lot soon to get his own budget passed by April the 1st. He says if they do not get the stimulus by the 31st of March, the cuts are going to come down, and they're going to hit.
So police reform might happen automatically that way if people have to be cut, right? If the police force has to be cut. Yeah.
Yes, and this is really going to hurt. This is really going to hurt. And if you want to keep the country in the doldrums for another year, then that's all the Congress has to do is not be able to pass something.
Now, we talk about development around this county, White Plains and the southern part of the county. Further up north in Yorktown Heights, there's a plan to take a shopping center where Home Depot is, on Downing Drive, the Yorktown Green Shopping Center, and convert that into a mixed-use residential/retail complex? Do we need to stop touching the more open spaces in the more northern reaches of this county and have it keep its bucolic look?
Well, where do those people who are going to rent those type of apartments work?
Where do they have the money at this point?
Yeah, and what are the rents going to be? I mean, that is the big question mark in White Plains. We've got the Mitchell, which is essentially probably going to be renting up by midsummer, and you've got the 55 Bank Street. And the question is, what are the rents going to be?
Mm-hmm. Is that always it? The bottom line, how you judge any development?
Well, let's face it. If you have to pay $3,000 for a 2-bedroom,
right,
if not more,
right,
that's what? That's $48,000, and so you've got to be making at least as a 2-income couple about $200,000.
Mm-hmm. And yet, younger people, millennials, and the like, people who are into the tech business and other businesses that the millennials populate nowadays, this seems doable for them. So there's one side that says you can't develop now around this tri-state area. People don't have the money to pay. And you have developers and real estate people on the other side saying, well, we do have a market of those who can pay. It may happen to be millennials and the like, but that's what the free market is about.
Yeah, but the developers are always behind the curve because they don't have the financing like they used to have. Developers used to pay out of pocket to develop their own places, and they got built fast. Now you have to go out and finance. You have to go get retailers to come in to give you your mixed use development. And that is what is delaying the pavilion in White Plains, the pavilion rebuild. The pavilion rebuild and our second hole in the ground. It's what's delaying the White Plains Mall from being developed. The banks don't believe in the projects.
All right, so are real estate people and developers begging for money and begging for retailers to come in now?
Yes, they are, but the retailers aren't buying. In fact, that's what the Grid Properties, the large developer in Harlem, said last week to the Common Council. They said the retail isn't there. It has really changed. They're unwilling to commit, and we want to build more housing on that property. Completely change the development, and they are talking with possible partners to go in who build apartment housing to go in with them on that. Now, whether that means they partner and it's sort of and they don't sell the property, or if they actually do sell the property. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that is the problem. They have a site plan, but the site plan would have to be changed. And so that if you got Grid Properties, who's used to doing this all the time, telling you that I can't get my retail component going, that's a big canary in the coal mine.
This would be big.
Developers are behind the times.
This would be big
behind the times.
Plains to get this in order to help rebuild from the destruction of COVID, obviously.
Yes, COVID has been a real factor, of course, in limiting the economy, but it has also changed people's habits.
Has COVID become a crutch?
No, COVID has been an excuse not to do things, not to go to the movies. Instead, I stay home and watch Netflix. Mm-hmm. It's an excuse not to go out to dinner because I'm afraid of getting COVID. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know about you, but I really miss going out. But
I do too, and yet I found, you know what? I was on the road in this business for 40 years, all around the tri-state area. I came back home here and found out when COVID began that there are parts of this old house where I came to as a teenager that I forgot existed, like my studio room here, my personal studio, the room I'm in, I forgot existed in this house. When I came back, my brother said, hey, where I got a place for you where you can work from. And he had just come back too. And he said, this bottom portion of the house is going to be mine now. Remember our aunt's old bedroom? And I looked, I said, where? He said, follow me. And I said, oh, yeah, here. I think
that's a great personal story.
It turned out.
I can identify with that. My wife is now saying, well, we really have to move. I want to get into some smaller place, an apartment where you don't have the stairs, and this place is falling down. And I'm saying, wait a minute, you really want people living above you, living below you, and going down to a dining room?
Right.
No. I mean, look, I tell you, I feel sorry for people who have to go down in downsize. I really do, because it's just not the same. I mean, right. I lived in apartments when we first started getting married, our marriage started, and I did not like apartment living. I had a nice apartment and it was fine for a while, but five apartments on the floor were burglarized.
Wow.
Yeah, except mine, because I had a chain lock that I could lock when I left the apartment. So when they opened it, they would see the chain lock and figure that someone was there. That's something everybody should have, is a lockable chain lock from the interior.
Now, about 10 years ago, my parents said, no, we're going to get out of here. We're going to sell the house. It's too big for us now. We're going to downsize, get an apartment, get a condo, get a co-op, something we can buy. It's a lot smaller.
Absolutely.
Take care of. They picked out a place in Bronxville. And I think the same week was when we had those terrible floods in Bronxville, like 2007, 2008, somewhere back there. And I said, they're not going anywhere, because my mother, once she hears floods, forget about it. My father came to me and he said, we're not going to Bronxville. Your mother heard about the floods. I said, just as I thought. And my mother passed away 14 months ago, but this house is still here, and it was great to be able to come back here. And I told my parents then, you will never,
great memories.
Never, ever, because you're not going to give this up. And I'm glad they did not. No doubt. Mm-hmm. John Bailey is publisher and editor of White Plains Citizen Net, reporter here on Westchester Talk Radio, produced by Sharc Creative, WestchesterTalkRadio.com. Made possible by our friends at Entergy, the Indian Point Energy Center, supporting our communities through April of 2021. Also, we say a special thank you to people like Wartburg Healthcare and Rehabilitation in Mount Vernon, Park Sterling Realty in Bronxville, and Michael Labriola, Landscape Design and Construction in Armonk. John Bailey, as we move along here into the early part of 2021, we're a month and a day in now. The county, Westchester County, has embarked on, and seemingly nearing the end now, about to complete their noise monitoring program over at the county airport, where North White Plains and Armonk and I guess the town of North Castle all come together there. Purchase Harrison, town of Harrison, right along 684, exit 2. Yes. Does it matter? A noise monitoring study at the airport? Noise is noise. Noise is going to happen at an airport. Regardless.
It's a political thing. They apparently installed them, but the problem is the air traffic is so down, it's 25% of what it was, that, I mean, I hardly see more than 2 or 3 planes a day. Mm-hmm. You know, they fly right over my house, and I tell you, there is a lot of aircraft noise in White Plains. It comes from the helicopters coming out of that airport. They fly at about 200-300 feet. They're loud, and it's really dangerous the way they fly over the suburban housing. I mean, those things go down like a rock if something happens to them.
Now you have all these communities that converge there. Well, I pointed all of them out. North White Plains, Armonk, Purchase. City of White Plains is just to the southwest there. You have the town of Harrison, the town of North Castle, all converging as one, basically right near the airport there. For somebody who lives near the airport there, does it really matter about this noise study, as you know, you've pointed out?
Well, the 2 pilots who served on the county executive's steering committee for the airport, two pilots analyzed the air traffic around the Westchester County Airport before COVID hit, and they pointed out that because of the present FAA pattern going into the airport, that it concentrates the approaches southbound into runway 16 and take off out of runway 34. Now, the pilots suggested if you just moved this and did more of a westerly approach, you'd cut the noise in half, or a good portion of it. And they suggested that, but of course, nobody did that. That's a simple solution. It's actually a lot safer. And they suggested that the pilots, they analyzed all the traffic flights, the flights for a couple of years, and I thought it was brilliant. But as usual, facts don't matter when politics is concerned. You got to keep those rich people living in those communities around the airport happy. Otherwise, they kvetch and they don't give them money. I mean, let's stop kowtowing to the privileged few.
Or they might vote against you.
Privilege.
Maybe they'll vote against you also, too. That's a concern for a politician.
Yeah, but who cares what Greenwich votes for in Westchester County? That's what the problem is Greenwich. You know?
Right, that's across the board.
Who cares? Greenwich is, it's like Grosse Pointe.
John,
nothing is more aptly named than the community Grosse Pointe.
All right, John, I want to point out, too, the county board has approved also monies for other repairs at the county airport, too, besides this noise study that we've had. Is there friction between Governor Cuomo and Senator Chuck Schumer, Andy Cuomo and Charles Schumer? Is there friction between them, between these two? We see indications there might be. Charlie Rangel, the former Harlem congressman, saying a few days ago he's gotten the impression they're not the best of buddies. They don't have to be, but they do have to be able to work together.
Well, Governor Cuomo is fiercely protective of his power. And he feels he is the smartest man in the room. And 99% of the time he is. Because the others don't suggest, don't act, and they only complain, but they never make suggestions. When I have never heard of Mr. Rangel ever taking a stand on legislation that needs to be done. Have you?
Sometimes. But I grew up as a teenager in his district.
I thought he was actually dead, Rangel.
In the early days, he didn't. He took over from Adam Clayton Powell in Harlem, where I grew up. He was in a
Well, that was another case in point. Adam Clayton Powell was a hero to the black community.
Right.
Because he would sit out there in the boat at Bimini and he wouldn't go to Congress for the votes. But they still returned to him to office every year because he was thumbing his nose at the white establishment.
I think, too, in the neighborhood at that time, the neighborhood felt he wasn't doing much anymore for the community, and Charlie Rangel came along, and he was doing a lot community-wise at that time, and that obviously...
Well, I really don't know, but these folks come out of the woodwork to criticize, but Governor Cuomo is taking responsibility. One of the few politicians in decades that I'm 75 years old, and he's one of the few politicians who has taken action in a crisis, made decisions that have helped, has been right all along on everything he's done, even though he's been criticized for it. And my God, I dread the day when we have another typical politician take over the state and we lose Governor Cuomo, because he is the best governor we have had in my lifetime.
Now, the governor threatens the Biden administration, his friend Joe Biden, saying we need X amount of money as COVID relief here in the state of New York. And if you don't give this to me by a certain date, I'm going to sue you. Is that the best way to get in with the new administration, regardless of the fact that they are old friends?
Look, he's been making this point for a year. And it is a new way of saying that we're not going to take it anymore because the problem, I was rather astounded by that too, quite frankly. But I think if Mr. Cuomo feels that Biden is going to cave in on COVID and we aren't going to get it, and he's trying to really do all he can to really impress the fact that the state needs it. We aren't coming back unless we balance our budgets, because everybody's going to be hurting. And the governor is going to have to cut. And then, of course, everybody will complain about that. All the other politicians will complain and whine. What do? That's what they do. They just whine. They don't progress. They don't come up with solutions. Typical of that is Mr. Abenante.
Tom Abenante?
Yes, right.
Senator,
yeah. What was he complaining about the other day? I mean, something crazy. You know? But you can't just whine and complain. You have to suggest.
All right, the governor is suggesting in his way. Does it seem like Mayor de Blasio is begging the new administration for money? The governor is not begging. He's asking in a certain way, maybe twisting arms a bit. Does it seem like Mayor de Blasio is begging for money? And like you said, if this is money in this region, we have to have.
Well, New York has huge problems. I mean, it is essentially closed. The businesses that are moving out, the business real estate has dropped like a rock in New York. And not only that, but it changes the whole building dynamic. New York exists on new construction, and it used to be new construction of apartments, et cetera, but now the apartments have gotten too expensive. Everybody's now moving out. Once again, developers hopping on the bandwagon and not looking at the demographics.
Are we relying too much on federal money for this region, for New York City, for Westchester, for the lower Hudson Valley? Are we relying?
We pay most of it, as the governor is fond of saying. We fund the whole country with our taxes.
And yet we
really do. And we got hurt the worst. And what has happened? The rest of the nation hasn't masked up. They have gone to restaurants. They have spread it. Those idiots who play football in college played football and infected entire squads.
Yeah, then I didn't get about college football. I know it's in the rest of the country, not in the Northeast, but the attitude seemed to be amongst coaches and school administrations like, well, everybody's going to get it. They're young and it doesn't affect them much, so they might as well get it now, get it out of the way so we can play. Even basketball, to some extent, college hoops, seems to be acting not as much like that, but yet they know the risks and they play anyway.
They play it for the money, John.
Yeah, I heard.
Student athlete. They are not student athletes. They're professionals brought in. It's particularly true. My daughter went to the University of Michigan, and those football players were treated like gods.
I remember the New York Times did about 3 years ago on a Saturday a story about the University of Michigan offensive line, and a reporter went and took a look at their dorm room, the dorm area where they all lived and congregated, and looked at the menu, wondering, how do these guys get to be 6'7", 6'8", 350, 360 pounds and be able to run like deer? And you talked about the University of Michigan with your daughter. That comes to mind immediately, that article about these offensive linemen and how the Times reporter went there and took a look at what they ate and went through the cupboards. And that reporter said one cupboard was stocked end to end with cans of white tuna and water. And of course, the egg whites and the chicken and salads and everything else that they eat. So it's amazing how college athletes get so big and are able to stay like this. And of course, they are at that age, the best of health. And yet they're running individually quite a risk by playing during COVID. A number of college players in football, a handful in basketball, did opt out.
Well, they're smart.
As we move along,
they're smart.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do get COVID, it has lingering effects, which we're just beginning to find out about, which is going to affect your athletic performance. So to play, just so you can get a career in the NBA or the NFL, and well, you may not get what you expect if you get COVID. I mean, you can't take chances with today's bubonic plague.
Right. That's what it is. And there is, I'm going to point this out too, Marco Rossi, who is an Austrian hockey player, number one draft choice of the Minnesota Wild, selected 9th overall in the NHL draft. He was given the okay to play in Switzerland before the NHL season ramped up in November. He came down with COVID after playing one game. He played in the World Juniors Championships representing Austria before NHL camps kicked in beginning of January. Then he's never been on the ice for the Wild in training camp or in this early part of the season. He was just sent home at the age of 19 or 20, whatever he is. He was sent home to Austria, is coming back here for medical reevaluation in 6 weeks. He has been told no physical activity while you are back home in Austria, and it shows what COVID can do to somebody who obviously is one of the top athletes in the world.
It affects your heart.
That it does.
Well, I mean, I have a friend on the television station. He has come down with COVID, and another at the television station tested positive, but he is got out of quarantine, so he's okay now. But you never know where you're going to get it.
This report from Attorney General Letitia James about Governor Cuomo and the way she claims he handled the COVID crisis early on and moving seniors from hospitals into rehab facilities and nursing homes, etc., who were already diagnosed with or suspected to already be infected with COVID. Will anything come of that, or is this political posturing? We see
it's political posturing because the nursing homes are one of the most powerful lobbies in New York State. They contribute a lot to the politicians, and the politicians hopped on Governor Cuomo for doing that, as did reporters who should know better, because every week at those press conferences, Melissa DeRosa pointed out that when seniors who had been in the hospital and were sent back to the nursing home, that if the nursing home did not have the facilities to take care of them, we would find some other place. But no, the nursing homes welcomed them back. They hadn't tested their staff, and they got COVID.
Now, Letitia James, the week before, issued a scathing indictment, I use that word in quotes, of the NYPD and the way they handled protesters back during the summer when everybody hit the streets of Brooklyn and Manhattan. Does it seem like she's running for higher office?
Look, it's, as I've often said, it is easy to be a Monday morning quarterback. And I would turn the question around. Well, how would you have handled it? How would you have handled it? How would you do that? I mean, we have to figure out what to do right away. And that's the big difference between running for, look what has happened with Mondaire Jones. He comes in, he introduces a bill to repeal the SALT talks. Do you think anybody is really going to pass a
revamp of the SALT tax?
Yeah. Right now, when we have got this big crisis going on between getting funding, it's bad timing. It's bad timing. I thought it was bad public relations. If you ever hope to get the SALT thing fixed, I'm sure they didn't want that distraction.
Mm-hmm. Mondaire Jones, of course, freshman congressman. He has the seat occupied for 30 years.
Yes, and he's been in this seat 2 weeks, and he introduces that. What a very poor, very bad advice from his advisors. You know, I just don't think I wouldn't have done that. It's like he's doing the AOC routine. Remember how
Well, she is technically part of the squad now with AOC. So
yes, that's right. But I mean, the problem was she came in and was really very vocal and earned a lot of pushback. And when you're the new kid on the team,
I know you're supposed to.
What you do? That isn't what you do. You try and fit in. You don't make waves. It's like you joined the Yankees in 1927, man, and you got these gods walking around you on the field, the greatest players ever played the game, and you respect them, and by respecting them, they respect you.
All right, but it's not 1927, and they did point out when they were running for office what they were going to do, how they were going to do it, and they have stuck to what they've said. The voters knew this when they voted them in.
That's true. So if he gets that SALT thing passed, more power to him. But I just don't think it was good timing. That's what they could do. They could probably say, all right, we'll revise the SALT thing, which I don't think they will ever do. But why you never give back what you already got.
John Bailey is the publisher and editor, the executive editor of White Plains, CitizenNetReporter.com. John, we thank you for your insight as always. Talk to you again in a few weeks, okay?
Always try and give people things to think about.
That you do, no question about that, John.
More thinking is needed today, let's put it that way.
Like I say, it doesn't matter what you
My part too.
I say it doesn't matter what you think, as long as you think. That's what it comes down to.
Right.
As long as you think.
Right. I revised a lot of things after I've been proven wrong. On the other hand,
I've heard I've been proven wrong too. It's hard to admit sometimes, but I've heard I've been proven wrong too.
Absolutely.
Yes, guilty as charged. I've been proven wrong sometimes. So here on Westchester Talk Radio, WestchesterTalkRadio.com, the Cup of Joe political show. I'm John Marino, produced by Sharc Creative and made possible by Entergy, the Indian Point Energy Center, supporting our communities through April of 2021. Lipolis Electric, don't be left in the dark. Get Lipolis. Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard. White Plains Hospital, thank you to our heroes at White Plains Hospital, all the healthcare facilities and hospitals around our tri-state area for all you've done throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Wartburg Healthcare and Rehabilitation in Mount Vernon, Park Sterling Realty in Bronxville, and Michael Labriola Landscape Design and Construction in Armonk. We thank you one and all. Catch all of our Westchester, Fairfield County, and Lower Hudson Valley Talk Radio Network programming. Rockland, Orange, Dutchess County, yes, Putnam County too. We have them all now on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube.